Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Good evening, ladies, gents, and all of you other Seidel-Smith troopers out there. It's just after 8 o'clock, and you're listening to Kaleidotrope on 89.2 WFLUF The Fluff. I'm your beleaguered host, Drew, and this is... you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the usual pleasantries. Today's a shitty day. I know it, you know it. Let's all wallow in it together, shall we? Not only has it been raining so hard that the whole campus is currently accessible only by gondola, but the milk in my fridge was expired this morning. There was a bike parked in my bike rack spot. I mean, a gondola floating in my gondola spot right outside the audiovisual department. And now, in very interesting news, I have been informed by my producer that the new co-host is going to be late. Late on his very first day. Having a late co-host seems like it defeats the purpose of having a co-host at all, wouldn't you say? So,
Drew, a college student at Seidel-Smith, after unwillingly being given Harrison as his new co-host, watches his music-themed radio show turn slowly into a romance advice hour, where he and Harrison do their best to sort out the love lives of Seidel-Smith's students. Soon, the two of them are thrust into their campus's biggest mystery yet. Do happily ever afters really come true? Kaleidotrope is a queer romantic comedy with a little fantastical twist. Season 1 is 9 half-hour-long episodes, and the show can be listened to in its entirety on YouTube. I got recommended the show by a friend of mine shortly after we started talking to each other when we first became friends, and we were talking about podcasts we like, and this is one that they recommended me, and because it was really short, I listened to it then and there, and I really like this one. I actually listened to this one twice, because the second time I listened to it, I would listen to it with my girlfriend. And it's very cute. It gives me like a lot of the vibes of like how I feel like early Tumblr was back, at least how it's described to me, because I didn't join Tumblr back in its heydays. I joined it like, I was pretty active in it like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. So not as early as like the early 2010s, mid 2000s. So I missed out a lot on that. And it reads a lot like a fanfic without actually being one, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, it just has like one of those vibes. And I think it's just very cute just the way that it's written. The characters in the show are very interesting because it mostly, almost entirely just focuses on Drew and Harrison. You get to have a lot of like information from these two, despite the fact that it's an only 9 episode long show. And the characters tend to dwell into difficult topics regarding relationships because this is a romantic comedy and they are running a advice column about romantic relationships, or just relationships in general, because there are aromantic characters in the show, and I just like how they're written. And yes, before you ask, it's a very, very gay show. I would not say it's a queer romantic comedy if the show was not very, very gay. Like what I was saying earlier about how some of the topics of relationships that the characters tend to talk about get very into difficult romantic topics. There is one episode I do have to put a content warning on. I forgot the exact number episode, but I have to put a warning on it for DubCon, if that's something that you don't really like listening to. It brings it up quite a bit in this one particular episode, and the scenario comes up a couple times throughout the rest of the show afterwards, but they talk about it mostly in just the one episode where it's first brought up. And it dwells into the topic of like negative relationships and whether or not you want toxic aspects in your relationships. And I know some people might find that uncomfortable, so I have to, warn you ahead of time before that. But overall, the show tends to be very lighthearted. It does have like some heavy topics between the characters because, of course, with your show, you have to have some character conflict. But it doesn't get like very grimdark. It's just if you want like a nice, light, fluffy show that doesn't get too heavy into its conflict, that has a happy ending, this is a good show. The one sad thing about this show, though, is that it's only one season. From some of the stuff I've been able to find, they kind of imply that they planned on having another season, but they never actually made it. I don't think their Patreon's up anymore. I am still going to link to the YouTube account so you could go listen to it. I will say, though, that if this does sound like a show you like, but you don't like the fact that it apparently isn't finished, season 1 does end off at a good enough place that even if they don't ever make a season 2, it's its nice own little thing. They wrap it up pretty good. So if that's a worry of yours, don't be too worried, because they do that, so yay. But yeah, overall, the show I really liked. It's so funny because they get into like topics, like conversations, like regular two people just talking to each other about stuff would get into. And I really like just how natural all the conversations in this show feel. And overall, it's just a nice little like listening experience. If you want like a short show, light and fluffy, I was about to say if you want a short show like The Visor, but like on the opposite spectrum of The Visor, if The Visor is on one end, this show's on the other, then there you go. Okay, so that is about it for this recommendation. Go check out Kaleidotrope if you want your nice, soft, fluffy, romantic comedy with so many gay characters. Because there are other characters. I don't remember their names because the show does focus mostly on just Harrison and Drew. But there is like a little mystery. They do resolve the little mystery at the end of the show. They resolve the relationships with these characters in the show. So, like I said, if you're disappointed that this is an apparently unfinished show, don't be too sad. It kind of ends off in the way that, like, I never watched DuckTales, but the way I heard DuckTales being described, like how they like try to finish the season like it's the end of the show, just in case. This is what this feels a lot like. So if you want more, but you don't want like a cliffhanger or anything, this doesn't have it. So you're good on that regard. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to be linking the YouTube down below. And if you have any other recommendations, please give them to me. I'm always asking for them. You never know. Your show might be the next one on my list. You never know. And anyway, I have my socials linked down below. As always, goodbye and thanks for watching.